name's Sam Hallawell. I've been coming to this particular meetup for probably around about 12 months now, on and off. I haven't hit all of them, but I've been coming for a short while, so a few familiar faces out there that I've spoken to before. Tonight, I want to talk to you about AWS's Well-Architected program. I'll walk you through a few of the concepts, I'll walk you through some of the terms, I'll even take you into a quick demo of what the tool does that's recently been announced. I'm happy to take any questions during the time. This is not your typical topic that you might find at the meetup. It might be a little non-technical for some people, but I find walking into a solution on AWS really benefits from the why that you're doing it, right? We can all build an instance, we can all turn a thing on, we can all make a packet fly across the network, we can all serve a web page. But it's why you want to do this and what conditions you're doing it for. A tiny little bit about me. I am currently acting in a CTO role across the road at a company called Intellimatics. We do many different things. We deal with traffic data from cars, we deal with big data from cars, and we also do a lot of data services. So it's publishing APIs, offering up weather and other types of information. I've had a few years experience now with AWS. I've been around long enough to be old enough and have probably tried it once and failed a couple of times. I used to also work for, I still see the new silver sponsor for this year is Bulletproof. I used to formerly work at Bulletproof as well as an AWS partner here based in Sydney and Melbourne. We've also had, I don't work there anymore, also had New Zealand. I used to do well-architected reviews for customers, like organisations out there for that company as well. I spent the last 12 or so months going away and getting a few certs, so that was really good exercise. So anyone's going away and getting certs, I highly recommend you give that a real good crack. A lot of employment opportunities arrive for people that have gone through this, so it's something you want to have a go at. So happy to answer any questions I can around that as well. So, everyone has a workload on AWS, and if you don't, well, I'm sure you will eventually. But the thing, I don't normally do memes, so I thought I'd throw one up today. What if I said it could be better? And of course, everything that we do can always be a little bit better, can always be improved upon. It goes to our other principles around DevOps, which is continuous improvement. I started this off with the why, but then I changed it to a you should. There's no reason that you should not go away and do a well-architected review on any of the workloads you have. That can be as simple as we're serving out some serverless websites like Chris might do, from buckets with API Gateway and other sorts of things. That could be full-blown PCI workloads that they touched on earlier, heavy government sort of workloads. There's no reason that you don't want to go away and do one of these. It's a way for us to measure from an architecture perspective, not just from a how many transactions per second or an uptime perspective, but it's a way for us to measure the architecture itself. You always learn something when you go through this process, and that's, if nothing else, you remind yourself of the things you did do well or you did not do well. And it gives us a way to go away and build a list that we can use to then go away to improve the thing that we have done, the solution that we've built. It's going to drive you to make better decisions, and that I mean by cost-based decisions, security-based decisions, or even performance-based decisions. There's a few other things I'm going to touch on as well, but it also highlights to you some of the risks that you're going to come up against. And one of the principles of AWS's well-architected framework is dealing with trade-offs. We can't always use something cool like the serverless option, which will drive down my cost because it's not based in my region, and maybe I'm constrained by a data sovereignty requirement, keeping my data onshore. Maybe you're not, and maybe you're prepared to trade that off because putting the public website for this forum over in the US is probably acceptable. It's public information, and we're probably happy to let it fly offshore, but it's not going to be the same as having our health data fly offshore. So there's ways that you're going to go away and mitigate your risk. It's also going to let you gain a better skill set around the why
And that's going to enable you to raise the bar on all your future workloads, because what you've done now, you might be constrained with because it's running in production and it's got 1 million customers on it. But the next time you try to do that thing, it will be better. And you'll take advantage of the new tools that you've got available to you, you'll make a better choice around risk, you'll improve something along the way. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know what it is they're running. Even though they're on this thing all day long, up and down the stack, by asking yourself this question, or your teams these questions, the people associated and intimate with the workload, you'll definitely learn things. What you thought you had done but had not yet implemented is a common one. What you hoped you had implemented, you hadn't quite executed on like you hoped you would have either. This is a chance to go away and build that list and fix these things up. And you're always going to learn about something new. We just saw the two guys get up, tell us about a whole bunch of new things, specifically things based around Sydney. So that's really important when you're dealing with data sovereignty issues or requirements that require a nearshore presence. Could just be network latency. It could be an outright brand new service, something like the serverless databases, the Aurora that they were talking about. It could be a really nice sweet point as a trade-off mechanism for cost when dealing with development environments. You probably don't want to use it for production, but it's a choice you'll make. So there's probably no reason that I can think of that you don't want to go through this exercise. And it can be a little bit boring, it can be a little bit dry, but the benefits you'll get will be realised. So what is the well-architected framework? It's premised on 5 key ideas, and I'll touch on those in a minute. But there are 3 things that really form the process around the well-architected framework. And it's 5 key pillars of that. I'll touch on them in a second. There are also design principles, and it goes to the why that we do a thing. Right? Why do we choose to do it this way? What things do I want to implement? And off the back of that, there's a whole bunch of questions. I'll expose some of the questions that you go through in a few more slides. But there are around 45 to 50 questions, depending on which slide deck you pick up and depending on which sort of version of the PDF you're using. But as of now, there are 48 key questions that they will ask you for you to go away and assess your workload. So what are the 5 pillars? These are the 5 key categories that you're going to be asked to look at as a part of defining your solution. The first is security. It's something we're all familiar with. It takes you through, the number of questions varies for each pillar. It's not a fixed construct, but there's around about 10 questions that they want you to analyse when dealing with security. They're going to ask you about your IAM controls. They're going to ask you about your access controls to data. They're also going to ask you about what's your policy around using encryption in transit or encryption at rest. So dealing with your KMS type products. How you're doing encryption on disk, whether it be EBS, whether it be S3. Maybe it's to do with your default position around buckets. There was talking about things that are new. There was a new feature recently brought out that allows us to put all accounts into a block public access for S3 buckets position. It's a really nice way to get a good footing on a new account. Previously, you had to go and write policies, you had to go and deploy things, you had to write Lambda, you had to watch CloudWatch events. There are many ways to solve this problem. Now AWS have made it a lot easier for us. Retrofitting it is a little bit harder, but you'll be able to go away and figure out your next workload will be better. The other thing they talk about is layers, security in depth. So they talk about perimeter security, they talk about host-based security or host edge security. So we know about things like network access control lists, NACLs. We know about security groups. And we've always known about things, well maybe we don't, but we've always known about things like host-based firewalls. And that could be something like IP tables as well. So it's going to try to take you through all of these types of concepts to uncover what it is you know and what you have implemented about your solution to find out that it's good. Or at least to get a measure on it. Performance is right up there as well. So this goes to picking the right style of instance. Don't undersize your instance. Make sure you know what sort of loads are coming at it and it is performing efficiently. The complementary one to this is cost.
Don't over-spec your box just going, well, the avalanche may arrive one day, because you're just paying for cycles that you don't need, or for CPU or RAM that you're never going to use. Performance efficiency also goes to picking the right types of storage. Right? What is the right size EBS that you need to back the writes per second, the IOPS you need for the workload that you're running? If it's serverless, it's a whole different question. These are things that you're going to want to consider as a part of your performance efficiencies. Reliability. So we always hear about our failures in the cloud. One of the key principles of using the cloud is design for failure. If you walk into all of your design decisions with the concept of design for failure, it's going to happen. I'm sure we've all had a box that's gone walkabout, moved zones, rebooted, done something. And did we have to get involved, or did we not get involved? It's about us understanding that process. This applies to many different things. So it applies to compute. Are we using auto-scaling groups correctly? Are we using EC2 recovery options correctly? Are we using the multi-zone correctly? Looking at RDS, you can easily have a higher available, a more reliable database option by ticking or coding the multi-AZ option. Multi-AZ equals true gives you an option to automatically fail over. Gives you somewhere that your data is being backed up and replicated to. We all hope that Amazon is doing the stitching well on that day, and we've all got compute there, but that's how it's supposed to be run. Operational excellence talks about how we get insights to our workloads. So things like CloudWatch events, CloudWatch logs. There are many things associated around the CloudWatch ecosystem. CloudWatch Insights is an extension of that which has recently arrived. A way to query our logs in a reasonable fashion. It doesn't just have to be the Amazon products. It's how do you get insight to your operational fitness? Even more so than what happens if something goes wrong, how do you know that you're ready to actually go live in an environment? We've all done dev, we've all done test, we've come through pre-prod or staging or whatever your flavour of name for that pre-production environment is. How do you know that you're ready to go live? If we're running the MyHealth platform, do we have the necessary support structures in place? Do we understand what our RTO, our recovery time objective is? Our RPO, our recovery point objective is? If we don't know these things, we can't make good design decisions around the availability or the reliability. So it's understanding these constructs that walk us up to being ready for a production workload. And it could be something as, is someone watching Slack on Saturday night, or did we all go to the pub and leave our phones or Slack in silent mode? That's not going to help us either. It might be your approach, and it might be cost effective to do it that way, as long as you're going to answer it when it all goes down. Or you've designed for reliability and it covers itself. There's many ways to solve this. And cost, if anyone's ever had to see a bill, I hope you've all in some way seen a bill, cost is a really important thing. You don't want to ignore cost. If we're playing with our own accounts, it might be $100, it might be $500, depending on what you want to spend. It might be $5. If you're playing with a corporate account, this can easily become $5 or $10 or $50 or $500,000 very, very quickly. Cost is something you're going to want to keep an eye on. So that goes to things like Cost Explorer, using budgets, using billing alarms. These are all things that you have at your disposal. Other things that will lead you into this, it could be, there are extended toolkit tools that are available around this. There are many things in the AWS ecosystem. One of the ones that I've used for a few years now has been Cloud Health. Some people have seen it, some people have heard about it, but it's a nice way that I can get access to all of my different accounts in one place and see a trend. And that's a really powerful thing. So each of these pillars have their own design principles. I've touched on a few of them today, and it goes back to the why. So I want you to always remember the why you're going to do this. The other guys in this room that are much smarter than me will teach you the how and the whats. I didn't want to key you with PowerPoint, so I've just put up one set of the design principles. Each of the pillars have their own. These are the general design principles that go with the well-architected framework. Stop guessing your capacity. provision low and you can always grow. A term that I have often walked around in with coming out of data centers, coming into the cloud, is harvesting is hard. If I provision a box that's this big and your workload gets on it, it's hard for me to claim back those things that you're not using. It's a little bit easier in AWS. It's much easier than it used to be in a data center or in VMworld or on physical tin. They were really hard problems to solve. But stop guessing your capacity needs, start testing. Testing is the next one. Test systems at production scale. So use the tools that you have available to you. There's things like Locust, there's things like Load Runner, there's things like Gatling that will help you generate the sufficient load that will replicate your customers' transactions and the volume of your customers' transactions. This will go through and test a whole bunch of things around reliability. Does your system grow? Does your system shrink? Because you want it to shrink as much as it grows to save you cost. Does it fail? If you start going and turning services off along the way, is the transaction still there? Are they recovered? Are they stored? Are they staged? Are they decoupled? Automate. These guys will tell you often, automate, automate, automate. All right, there's no reason that you should be doing anything like ClickOps. I think that's a term I learned from one of the guys down the back there. Anymore. You're allowed to ClickOps to get a feel and understand what options are available to you. But your first point, once you understand, is go away and automate that thing. And not everything should be automated. There's probably only half a dozen things I've found so far that you don't automate because you don't do them often enough. It might be a one-time shot. Allow for evolutionary architectures, and that goes to understanding the why. These things will help you get to an evolutionary architecture. And it could be taking on new services, it could be moving to serverless databases, it could be leaving SQL behind and moving to MySQL, or even going further and taking it to Aurora. These are the ways that we can go through an evolutionary architecture. Informed decisions. Use data to make a decision. I will downsize an instance because I know it doesn't need this. Or I know it does need this, so therefore I'll increase it. I'll add more disk to it. I'll increase the size because I need a higher network bandwidth. And improve through game days. Game days is a term that AWS use often. There are 50 different names for them, but ultimately it's a way that you can practice going through this task. Sports teams go through game days. They all go through training. They all have a mock game at training. So when they get to the real thing, they all know what their job is. They all know what they have to do. They all know what the experience is like. They all know what a tackle is. They all know what a mark is if you're into football. They all know what cricket's like. So using game days where you have a safe environment, and I've often seen people use pre-production or even other environments that look very similar where they can go in and turn the thing off and go, did that alarm go off? Does that thing recover? These are ways that we can understand what the architecture does. How am I going for time? You're not going to be able to read this, but I wanted to show them because you'll be able to find them on the web and you can explore them at your own leisure. The first white one is the old visualization of the AWS framework. The new yellow one is the one that Werner put up recently at 2018 reInvent. They say the same things in slightly different flavours. I personally like the blue one, the white and blue one. I've used it for a couple of years now. It's a really nice way to have a discussion with your team around what's important and what we need to focus on. And the 5 large circle boxes ultimately reference the 5 pillars that I've been talking about. So some of the questions. So what are some of the things you get asked during this well-architected process? How do you detect and investigate security events? If someone's knocking on your front door, someone, God forbid, is brute forcing you, someone is bit mining you and sending all your data to China, how do you know it? There are ways. Does anyone know a way? Just to get some interaction.
Look at your logs.
Perfect. We can use CloudWatch logs to start looking at these things, right? We can start using VPC flow logs to understand where our traffic is flowing. There's even tools that we're using now in my current role, guard duty. And not my current role, but with my security team, they use the guard duty tool. And these tools are telling us every single day someone's knocking on our door. And every second day someone's actually brute forcing us. We're doing pretty well defending the edge, so we don't get too many of the Bitminer to China scenarios, but you need to keep an eye on it. And how do you defend against the emerging threat, right? Something always new is coming out. It's about being vigilant, it's about having security in depth, it's about understanding what threats are out there. If we know, we can start to defend, so it's about being informed. Using the threat model to understand what is out there in the wild at the moment will help us understand where to put our focus. These are all really good aspects that you need to keep an eye on when considering security. So I just picked 2 of the security questions there. How do you manage your workload at operations event? I won't go through all of them. What sort of procedures do you have in place to understand what goes on once you're in a production operating mode? How are you going to ensure that you're actually minimising impact to any changes that go on? Some people may have dealt with a CAB or a change approval board. I see some people smirking, so they still suffer the pain. Good. Yeah. It's a real thing. For other people at the other end of the scale, they've got push button releases with automation and a bunch of automated testing, and the light goes green and we automatically deploy and everyone goes to the pub for beer. Well, that's one end, and the other end is, well, we're all still stuck in a meeting deciding if we go live or we don't go live for changing the font on the front page. But it's understanding this, right? So it's not all about the tools or the auto scaling or the reliability. Sometimes there's processes that go along with it. And if you can demonstrate, and one of the things that we struggle with is demonstrating our confidence to our business people around the repeatability that will actually drive us to a cab-free life for some people. I still sit on cabs, so I apologise to anyone. I won't go through all of them. So how does it work? Ultimately, as part of the well-architected framework, they've now brought us a well-architected tool, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But ultimately, we define a workload, and a workload is a single-purpose workload. I don't want to hear about everything from HR to finance to SAP to the back-end website to the intranet. That's not a workload. The intranet is a workload. Or SAP is a workload. Or your Alexa function is a workload, right? Your Alexa skill, that's a workload. It's a tiny one, but it's still one. And then we go about unpacking that workload and answering all those 48 questions. I've run through the 5 pillars. We'll get into a couple of those if I can. And just like with all things in the AWS ecosystem, there's mountains of information out there. So many white papers, you'll fall asleep. There's a bunch of videos if white papers is not your thing. Go away and have a look at these. They'll all tell us best practice in some form or another. Another thing that the tool will do is generate the report. And a report is a simple PDF that has a long list of questions. It has the contents of your answers and any notes that you add. And you should try to be as verbose as you can be on all of these questions, because when you go back and look at it in 3 months or 6 months or 6 years, why did I say that? Why did I think that? Your verboseness will remind you of it. It's just like coding and comments. Help me unpack this in 3 years' time when I have to fix it again. And then go through and use that results as a form of checklist and a way that you can start ticking these off to make things better. Hopefully you've fixed the workload that you've just reviewed. Hopefully you use that to inform the next workload that you're building. Part of the lessons learned. So the tool I've touched on was released in November last year. It's nothing flash. I'll touch on it in a minute, what it does and what it doesn't do. So it's not an all singing, all dancing, click one big button, it goes away and figures out, am I open to the internet on my security groups? Doesn't list out my public S3 buckets. These are the things that it doesn't do. This tool and process was formerly only available to a privileged few, Amazon solution architects, professional services, and AWS partners. You sort of had to be part of that ecosystem to get access to this type of tool set. Now it's been made available so anyone out there can go away and do it themselves. And it's not as cool as containers, right? And it's nowhere near as cool as serverless either. Okay. So, let me just walk through it. On the left-hand side, you've got the two essential menu options. One is the dashboard, which is a list of all of the reviews that I've conducted, one in this particular account. And inside that, we can start to unpack the workload. So what it does is, like most of these things, it gives us a little bit of a panel. I've answered the questions. For the mock workload that I ran through in my head, and I picked up one that I recently used, I highlighted 30 high-risk things. Better? 30 high-risk things, 10 medium things. And my improvement status is in progress, and that's because I moved a widget specifically along that said I had started to remediate these things. Some of the things on this list. It goes through and highlights all the pillars that I spoke about before. So you can start to unpack some of these things that I was talking about. I touched on questions 4 and 5 for security. So I'd like to dig down and find those now. How do you detect and investigate security events? We touched on it before. How do you defend against emerging threats? So some of the things I said I do for the workload that I went away and analysed was I have service logging. So I use ALB logging, I use VPC logging, I use CloudTrail or CloudWatch, config. But I've also got application logging. So if I'm running a Tomcat thing, if I'm running a Node thing, I'm ejecting that out as well. Because both sides of the coin make up a story. And not only do I log, this is the one that gets most people, I actually look at the logs. I hear you laugh because you're right, who goes and looks at logs? I look at logs right after I read all the white papers. Never. But it's a thing I say I do, and that could be because I've got a tool that watches it and sends me criticals. At least I'm looking at them because I have a tool that has gone through this process. I don't sit there and read line by line. And I have developed an investigation process. If something goes off, I know who to call, I know what I want them to look at, and if something's going really bad, they know who to call. Or what to do. Turn it off. So we found a rogue service one day. It was doing a thing that was terribly bad. Through an escalation call, we decided to decommission the service. It's the thing we did. This is a fictitious workload. Anybody? How do I defend? I keep up to date. I'm reading the news, the AWS news. I'm reading security news. I'm trying to stay up to date with compliance, so the IRAP stuff, great. Now I can move that workload. I can finally deploy that workload to Australia rather than offshore. Never deployed it offshore. It was always in my data center. Now I have at least a choice to make. And trying to stay up to date with security threats, well, I'm not reading white papers and reading logs. I'm trying to catch up with that sort of stuff. So it goes through and asks us, in security, it was 11 questions. I'll touch on the operational ones, which were 6, 7, 8, I think we called out. How do you manage workload operations? This was the other one I spoke to. Oops, I clicked on the wrong button. Here is a list of the questions in editable way. So these are all the choices I had to make, rather than the first one was the ones I had selected out of a subset. So things I say I do for this category, you can see them up there. I try to look and I try to send. But there are a bunch of things I don't do. Maybe I don't have a process per alert. If I take a critical alert that is related to Bitcoin mining, do I send it to this guy? Or if I have an application alert, do I send it to this guy? Guy or girl. Depends on where I need to send it to. That's what that type of stuff leads me to. Have I automated response? Did someone open a bucket to public? And do I have a Lambda watching a CloudWatch event that automatically applies a policy or deletes a bucket? Maybe that's how I deal with that security. Maybe I had none of these. Lucky I didn't answer that, so I would have had more criticals. The last thing I want to show you is the report. Oops, my bad. My report. I can show you my report, which is, I think it's that one. No, I've misplaced my report like a fool. It's going to be in here, workload 1. All right, so this is the PDF that gets generated. I called it workload 1, so it's got, this is the workload 1. The AWS account number, you can all go and hack me tomorrow. But it goes through and starts to list out all the things. So you can see there the summary I called out earlier. I had 30. That's because I went away and fixed one of the things. One of the things I said I fixed was turning on MFA for my root account. It gives you a nice little checklist that you can go through. Things that weren't selected means things you can go back and improve. So use this as a form of basis to get there. Nothing earth-shattering in the back of this. It just lists all of the questions. So use the tool. It'll guide you through the process, and that's all I want you to understand. It's not about EC2s, it's not about databases, it's not about buckets, it's not about policies. So things it does do, it gives you guys a way to go and self-serve. It's a place to track all of your reviews. Formerly, you would have had a PDF, someone would have sent it to you, you would put it on a SharePoint or a shared drive or a USB key and tried to share that information around. It reminds you of the things that are important, so keep that in mind, because every day they release something new, and if we asked you what were the first 10 services, the 10 to 20 services, we'll all forget. This helps you remember. And it gives you a PDF version, which someone always had to go away and type. It doesn't replace humans, right? I've talked about a bunch of things today that we need to keep in mind. And it doesn't provide you a magic list of these are the things you need to close out today. I'll make this available to you guys that you can put online. So there's a whole bunch of links in the back of this. I won't go through them all. One thing I do want to call out though is if you are dealing with serverless or you are dealing with Internet of Things or high performance compute, there are sub-specific documents relating to those types of architecture, because the way I design a serverless architecture to the way I design a servered architecture are very, very different.
I wanted to design an IoT thing that comes to company.
Of course you could. Thank you, buddy. We appreciate the plug. And if you want some people advice, you can always go and chat to Amazon or their professional services people, and I know that's not everyone here in the room, but people that have access to that type of ecosystem, it's definitely worthwhile. There's a whole bunch more things there. So people to follow, things to use, game day references, there's a few blogs off the back of that you can go and use as well. And that's probably all. Thank you.
All right, we might take a couple of quick questions. Anybody have questions for Sam? No? Everybody's hungry?
Go.
You said that there was some things that you shouldn't automate, and you said there was like half a dozen things. Like,
so one of the things we contemplated automating was SES, so simple email service. It's available in one region. You only probably do it once for what you need to do, so that's probably one of the ones I can remember. I can't remember. Let me go and talk to some guys that are smarter than me. There's not many things at all. Not many things at all.
Was there one more question for Sam? Yeah?
So you do these reviews as part of your work?
I have done formerly, yep, and not anymore.
Do you find that this being released is interfering with your chance of getting work?
No. So if I put on my former hat when I was in the partner ecosystem, I'd say no. Because the thing it lets me do is it goes to a long way to automating it. Formerly we would use different sorts of tools, Excel and other bits and pieces. This makes life a whole lot easier. Am I happy with the PDF format? No. Did the PDF I used to create look better? Yes. But does it cut my grass? Not quite. It's complementary. There you go. One more.
Do you think that having sort of a question and answer format from AWS, right? They're asking you the questions direct and you're filling them in, sort of remove the prestige, or so to speak, of having well-architected. So previously, before, you had to engage a partner or AWS. Like, you can have a company self-certify right now.
Is it too late? Is that sort of the question?
Yeah.
I'd say yes, except for I bet you for 90% of the room, 98% of the room, that you've never well-architected your first solution. And if you did, the game's changed. Because that's been running for 1 month, 3 months, 12 months, 2 years, and there are a whole bunch of new services that are now available to you. So there's always a chance to improve. And if you saw some of the things, even if you go away and scan the well-architected framework, scroll right to the bottom, read the 48 questions, you'll go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, we don't do that very well. There's always something to do. So no, it's never too late to do it.
Cool. Thanks, Sam.